morning. Welcome to another edition of the Northland Sports Page. It's Brian Prudhomme. It's Dave Cook. It is the first of two shows featuring at least the both of us on your Saturday. We're here till noon with the Northland Sports Page. And then again, it's Monster Weekend kickoff from noon to 1. Greg Grell will join us for that one. So it's going to be a busy Saturday of sports, most of the summer, quite frankly, on the Northland fan. Lots of shows with us, but before we talk about our shows any further, Dave, I know you want to spout off about a great show you saw last night.
Yeah, we went and saw the play at the North Shore yesterday, the Peter Pan play, and it was amazing. And it was amazing for a couple of reasons. First of all, their setup was fantastic. Normally, in between scenes in a play, they pull the curtain, they make the sets different, they come out and do the next. Well, these guys just turn the lights down a little bit, and everything, all the set changes were open and visible the entire show. So they would just roll things out here, roll things out there. The cast played all the instruments too. So the drum was sitting out there, and one of the cast members would do that. So one guy played a recorder. The piano guy was one of the characters. He would quick go play the piano if they needed that. And I was telling you, I know Evan Kelly a little bit.
Right.
His character, not just the way he played his character, absolutely amazing. Might be the best Duluth play I've seen. And Evan might have played the best character of a Duluth play that I've seen. It was fun. It was fast. There was a lot of singing. There's a great mermaid scene in there that Dana called even this morning and said, I just can't believe that scene. So if you had a chance to see it, you know what I'm talking about.
Right. I have not, but I told you this as you were, beaming with pride about what you saw last night. I said, well, just about everything that gets put on at North Shore is fun. The facility, what they've done to it over the years is outstanding, and it sounds like the talent up on the stage is outstanding too.
100%. That was as good a money spent for entertainment in our town as I've had.
Speaking of good money spent, the Northland Sports Page, we're grateful to be here every Saturday. We are not able to be here without our great sponsors. Go spend some money with them.
Yeah, so start with Arolla Architecture Studio. They kept us. They spent money on us. Please spend money on them. Hoops Brewing, Mike Regan at Christensen Group Insurance. Blackwoods, their locations include London Road, Blackwater, Tavern on the Hill, Proctor, and Two Harbors. I'll bet you the Blackwater was busy last night after and before the play. Mount Royal Bottle Shop, Stewart's Bike Sports and Trophies, Comfort Systems of Duluth, who, by the way, were at our house fixing our gas meter yesterday. And Dana called me and she goes, oh my gosh, I feel safe living in my house again because the experts from Comfort Systems came and took care of it.
I was going to say, Comfort Systems, those folks put the comfort in your home, courtesy of Comfort Systems.
It's one of those things their Comfort Systems coming, okay, well, it'll be taken care of in a little bit. Kohler Toyota and Kohler Hyundai. Advantage Element Screen Printing, Krause Heating and Cooling, your Carrier HVAC authorized dealer. Brian, it's your Carrier. I was talking to Dana just a minute ago. Your Carrier in northeastern Minnesota. Heat and cool your house with Krause. And we have a new sponsor, Brian.
We do. Welcome to the family. I'll let you do the dirty work, but then I'll talk a little bit more about who they are.
Assisted Living Locators. It's free to use. You can help your loved ones. Lord knows I've been doing that over the past year and a half. And searching for assisted living, searching for memory care, or even independent living is a pain in the backside, Brian. And Assisted Living Locators helps, and it doesn't cost you anything. You can reach them at www.assistedlivinglocators.com/Duluth. That's assistedlivinglocators.com/Duluth.
Absolutely, and that's owned by our good friend Kaylee Olson. She's one of the best in town at what she does. She's also a great athlete of old, and she may not like that I just called her old, but she's also a great coach currently. So Kaylee Olson does good work, and I know we segued into our sponsors with spend some money on what they do. You hit on that a couple times. With Assisted Living Locators, no money needs to be spent.
Well, so many of our listeners are at that age where either it's mom and dad who are kind of looking down the barrel at assisted living.
Right.
And some of our listeners are actually looking down the barrel at assisted living. And it is a hassle to try to find out how much it costs, what their rules or things in that order were. I know with mom, we spent, I don't know, Brian, what did we spend? 3-4 months trying to get a place for mom?
It can be a chore.
Yeah. And
let them do that work for you.
Right, because we don't know all the ins and outs, right? This is our first swing at this, and you can get lost. And a place like Assisted Living Locator can take care of all that areas that you don't know about. They do.
Absolutely. So again, so grateful for our entire sponsorship family. They have certainly helped us stay on the air for almost 7 years now. I think when you think about that, we're kind of awestruck by the number every time we say it. But bottom line is we probably overachieved a little bit. When we first started this show, I think we thought 7 episodes might be good. Creeping up on 7 years is darn good.
Can you imagine what either our folks or our wives would have said? We're going to have the show. It'll be going on 7 years. They just said, yeah, you overachieved.
Right. I mean, we were told multiple times by multiple stations because we've been on different frequencies over the years, you're going to get just enough leash. Let's see what you do with it. And so far, we're still walking the dog, so to speak.
So far. Let's keep it going.
It has been a lot of fun. We're going to have a lot of fun today. Again, this show goes till noon. And then again, Monster Weekend Kickoff. Greg Grell will join us. And we'll talk to Tony O'Neill. We'll talk to Steve Walters. We'll talk to Devontae Johnson. Harbor Monsters on the road, headed down to Kansas City where they'll play tonight. And everybody had a lot of fun in Duluth at the opener of the preseason game last weekend. We won't talk about that extensively now because, again, we've got a whole hour to do it. And you're going to have that each game day for the Harbor Monsters, again, with Monster Weekend Kickoff.
Let's touch on it for a second for people that might have something to do, though, today because, and I mean just like a minute or two, if you have a family, right, and you want to do something on a Saturday night or Saturday early evening in some cases, and you just don't know what to do, the interplay between the players, the coaches, the arena, and the fans is something I haven't seen. Like, you really need to go and just experience the event. You don't have to like football. My son said, Dad, I could care less about football, but holy cow, this event was fast. It's loud. It's very, I mean, the football is fast. It's a little violent. It's not dirty violent, but it's a closed environment, right? And the suites, Brian, I know that the suites don't look like a lot from sitting down or looking down on them, but can you imagine leaning on the boards of a football game, playing boards with a beer in your hand and having the players run by at full speed? I want to do that. Like, I want to do that. So
it does create a different perspective, that's for sure. If you want to learn more about it, again, just stay tuned right here because noon to 1 is going to be Monster Weekend Kickoff, and that's going to be each game day for the Harbor Monsters, not just the home games. So, again, they're on the road in Kansas City. We'll talk to Dave Hoops later today. He's got a watch party for their road games, too.
100%. I mean, it's really a cool thing to immerse yourself in because they immerse themselves into the community already. So
absolutely. So we'll be singing the praises of the Harbor Monsters hopefully all summer long. We'll be eulogizing the Timberwolves a little bit today because that season came to a bit of a thud of an end back on Thursday night. But I think if you step back and look at the whole thing, I think you have to realize how grateful you should be for said season. But speaking of grateful, we're going to talk to Julianne Vasichek at 10:30. I'm always grateful for that. There's a championship story in women's hockey that should not be overlooked at all because we lament the losing enough in this fan base, in this state, in this area. Let's rejoice in the winning too.
Oh, yes, 100%. And kind of a sport that we've taken not just pride in, but kind of a little bit of ownership in.
Right. We're the state of hockey for a reason.
Now, back in the day, the Dodgers, for instance, their first names were things like the Hazoos, right? They were the champions, I believe, at one point. I think that the Minnesota women's hockey team needs to have some, like, we were first. The Minnesota, we won, you didn't.
Well, Taylor Heisey, who was the number 1 pick and the MVP of the finals, said that she'd like the team's name to be the Minnesota Reign or the Purple Reign, REIGN. And I think with the purple color scheme, with the Prince connection, being the reigning champions, that's perfect.
That works. Yep, that's the idea. That works.
But the thing is, being the state of hockey, I think it's kind of assumed that they properly achieved. We use the term underachieved, overachieved to describe teams and seasons. When you're Minnesota, with the amount of talent that you have in your proverbial backyard, you should be winning in hockey, and the women did, and that's great. The Timberwolves, let's go back to them because we're going to throughout the course of the show. When you look at it, did they underachieve? Did they overachieve? Did they properly achieve? Because there's a lot of different takes here. I respect them all, but I know what I think.
They overachieved.
They certainly did.
The regular season, 100% overachieved. The first round, they're a matchup nightmare for Phoenix. I know that Phoenix beat them during the season, but they're a matchup nightmare. The Denver thing, we talk about it all the time with teams and that's their World Series, that's their Super Bowl.
Right.
The Wolves completely overachieved against Denver. And did they thud in the last 5 games? Yeah. Did they really thud in the last one? Yes. But they won their Super Bowl. They overachieved like crazy this year. So
see, and I agree with you.
I don't know how you look at it any other way.
Well, the folks that want to maintain the Minnesota sports narrative, they're the ones that do. Because they can say, well, they underachieved. They were the number 1 seed till the last day of the regular season. and then they kind of thudded, if you will, against Phoenix on the final day of the regular season to drop to 3, then yes, they beat a Phoenix team that on paper, I guess you're supposed to when you're looking at a 3-6 matchup. I don't know how anybody can escape. They beat a higher seeded Denver team, who, by the way, was the defending champions. But then they're going to say, you lost in embarrassing fashion at home to a seed lower than you. Now, I don't agree with any of that. I don't, all of those things are facts, I guess. But I don't agree with that being your main takeaway. But you said, I don't understand how people view it any different. The casuals that came on board only to get disappointed again. I'm just telling you what I think they think.
When
I don't agree with it, but what do you think?
And I know I don't drink a lot, but one of the things that has caused me not really to, when I was a kid, I learned this, is sometimes drinks taste really, really good, and then the aftertaste is awful.
Yeah.
And you may not remember that the drink was really,
That's a good
really
analogy for this season.
Well, that's what we're looking at. The season and the first part of the playoffs are really good, and if we're going to judge the playoffs by the fact that Luka went off for 20 points in the first quarter, I don't know if we can judge the whole season by that. Did they stink that game up? Yes. But they got there.
Right.
Like, give them some – imagine if this was the Wild, and they got all the way to that level and blew out the Avalanche and – matched up terribly with the Stars.
Well, we had that in hockey when the North Stars made the Stanley Cup Finals,
Yes.
and when Pittsburgh dismissed them, I believe that final game was 8-rip or something to that effect.
And I don't think anybody thought that season was a failure.
Right.
So
that regular season probably was. The playoff run probably salvaged it.
Right. Give the Wolves their props. Don't, what do they say? Give them their flowers. This was amazing. Enjoy it and quit. Luka's turning into one of the top 10 players of all time in front of our eyes.
Will it be a little bit disappointing? And I'm a Celtics fan, so my answer will abruptly be no. But will it be a little bit disappointing if Dallas somehow gets just dismissed by Boston and you go, oh, sure, now they're human again?
No, not at all. You know my feelings on sports. So
I agree. And the interesting part,
Boston. When's the last time you heard me say that?
I was going to say, I have so many with me, except for Rhett McDonald, who decided to tweet me how he feels about my Boston fandom. And that's whatever.
I'm not a fan of
He's
Boston.
one of my best friends. Right. But my tweet was, I know that I take a lot of grief for being a Boston fan. I'm Timberwolves 1, but Boston is very much 1A. And I've taken a lot of heat for that over the years. And I said, this coming week, I should have a lot of people that have given me a lot of crap probably siding with me. Well, one of my best friends said no, but I think all-encompassing, I might be right.
Yeah, no, I think you are too. I think Minnesota fans have an aversion to Dallas. Just look at ... Herschel Walker, North Stars. Like, I think there's a lot.
I'm surprised you didn't come in rocking an Edmonton Oilers jersey today.
Well, if I had an Edmonton Oilers jersey, I would be wearing it.
There you go. Birthday gift ideas. Plenty of months remaining. Actually, Christmas comes first. So there you go, Dana. Right. I'm trying to help you.
We'll help Dana with, we'll get a Niederreiter Oilers jersey, even though that doesn't exist, and she can wear along with me.
Make it happen. You can customize anything.
Yep.
Put anybody on any team you want.
That's true.
But at the same time, when we think about this show, of course, it's every Saturday. And there are times, and we've lamented this, that, we're only on Saturdays and so much news breaks Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and we'd like to be able to talk about it immediately. I, for one, was pleased that we got to wait until today to talk about the Timberwolves again, because I understood the in the moment of, oh my gosh, this is embarrassing. This is typical Minnesota sports, yada, yada, yada. I had a hard time staying with the second half on Thursday night because what was the point?
Yep.
But by Saturday morning, certainly, and for me it was much sooner, but certainly by Saturday morning, you should be able to step back and go, that was a hell of a season by a team we didn't expect to do that well. Now I'm concerned about next year. Concerned might not be the right word, but I've told you this how many times. Teams get unfinished business mantras, and they think you can start game one in late October next season with one win and we're back in the conference finals. No, you've got to start that long journey again. The expectations are going to be so much different now.
I think this postseason, Mike Conley held them together pretty much. I think next year is Mike Conley's year. Like, he needs to keep a 23-year-old Anthony Edwards focused on the fact that you didn't do anything yet. I think he needs to keep charging that battery. My concern is twofold. One, this ownership thing has to get taken care of.
Right.
Tim Conley's the toy or is the prize, right? I think if Glenn Taylor is the owner next year, Tim Conley's not here. And you have to give him credit for building this roster. If he's gone, what are we going to bring in Sachin Gupta again? And guess what? We're going to deal a whole bunch of stuff for a bunch of draft picks, and away we go.
It had to be interesting for Tim Conley when the Wolves and Nuggets were battling it out, because he's basically the architect of both of those rosters.
One way or another.
I got to think he's sitting there like Montgomery Burns from The Simpsons going, excellent, because everybody knows exactly what they're doing thanks to him.
Yep. And the other thing is this second level luxury gutter.
Yeah, what's his roster going to look like financially? Because it'll have to have a change of some kind.
If Laurie gets it, or can we just call him Lore? That was more fun. When Lori gets it, they don't have the funds, I don't think. If they're struggling to buy it, they don't have the funds to run into that double luxury tax. Somebody's going to have to go.
Right.
And is it going to be Cat because the fans will go, yeah,
financially it would have to be.
Well, it could be Gobert.
It could be. But then what did you net from that trade?
Well, and here's the thing, and I read this the other day, and I wanted to talk to you about it, but my week, right? If you're the Timberwolves and you make a trade if you trade one of your superstars and you just do a Timberwolves thing and go get a first this year and a first next year, they don't need a first this year and a first next year.
Right.
They need a person who can step right in and contribute because they're ready to go. They don't need the center from Duke to sit on the bench for 2 years, right? They have to get a guy who can play. So that's the trick to the trade.
Well, my hope, too, is that the casuals that came on board for basically the last 4 weeks, hopefully, one, they stick around, but hopefully, two, they start to understand how the off seasons work. Because I fear that if the Wolves have to make a change due to the luxury tax idea, that I understand that, you understand that because we've been basketball fans, and to a certain extent, you have to be part capologist to understand all of it. But those that don't are just going to think this is Twins 2.0. Oh, sure, you had a great season. Now you're cutting payroll and you're getting rid of guys. It's not the same thing when you have a cap that you have to play with. And the way the NBA works is so different even from the others that have the cap.
Yeah, because if you hit that second luxury tax, your hands are tied on almost everything. Like your tax bill is ridiculous, and like you can't trade contract for contract anymore. You have to do weird stuff to even survive. So
100%. But again, to encapsulate the Timberwolves season, I put them in the overachieving category, and I look at it because this was a team that got in via the play-in more recently and had a bunch of 20-somethings and even the older guys. We all assumed, we as a fan base, not necessarily me and you, Dave, but we all assumed that the Rudy Gobert idea was a bust. The Herschel Walker analogies were out there. We owe Rudy Gobert an apology, certainly. More so maybe even than Draymond Green does. But this team went from, yeah, they'll get in the play-in tournament. They may win their way into the playoffs and then get housed by somebody. The expectations, the performance were much different. This is an overachieving team to me.
Yes.
But I think, Dave, it also depends on how you determine that you're going to define the term overachieving. Does it mean in a positive that you saw expectations on one level and said, we can exceed that with ease? That's overachieving. Or is it, are you an overachiever because you found lightning in a bottle and you got a little luck? I think maybe the answer is yes, but it depends on how people want to define it.
Right.
Because it stems to our last 10 minutes for an opening topic today.
And it's like you said, this year's Timberwolves overachieved, but last year they were in the playoffs, and so how much did they overachieve? They became a better team. The one that when I was doing a little bit of looking on this, the one that really was interesting to me is the 98 Vikings.
Well, and let me kind of create the idea here because, again, what Dave was getting at was our opening topic for today. It is going to be overachievers historically, sport by sport. We're, of course, going to focus more on Minnesota than teams overall. But, again, we want to go beyond just this year. So it's going to be about teams that we feel overachieved. 98 Vikings, Dave, that's an interesting segue to start because they certainly overachieved in the sense of I don't remember another Viking team ever going 15-1. But I have a hard time remembering what the expectations were. I think 97, they were coming off that wacky wild card win against the Giants and then getting obliterated in San Francisco. So I guess, when you look one season to the next, that probably qualifies.
Well, they went in 97, they were 9-7, 96, they were 9-7, 95, they were 8-8. They were just a team, right?
Right.
They were a middling team. And then I know Moss, right?
Yep.
But they went from just kind of scuffling along for years to all of a sudden being the best team the NFL had seen until they lost to Atlanta. Like that team was, and I say it's overachieving because it went from middle of the road to oh my gosh in one season.
Right. The only thing that I would argue for the overachieving argument with that group is overachieving to me says you don't have the talent to get to this spot. Sometimes I wonder if the Vikings always did. The Vikings just managed to Viking their way to 9-7 a lot.
Yeah, no, we looked at that as well. But like Randall Cunningham, we didn't expect anything from Randall Cunningham, and he overachieved to the point 100%. Of being close to the MVP of the league that year.
Yeah, I was going to say he got comeback player of the year, what have you, but he could have very well been the MVP of the league.
And their defense still stunk, Brian.
Speaking of MVP seasons, that's where I go with overachieving Vikings teams because you look at that 2012 team.
Yeah,
that Leslie Frazier took a team to the playoffs somehow. And obviously, somehow, due to injury, we found a way to miss Christian Ponder when Joe Webb had to play at Lambeau and embarrass himself. But that team on paper looked like they might be embarrassing. It was Adrian Peterson and what else? Now, you can look at the way the season played out, and you can still say, well, Brian, it was Adrian Peterson, and what the hell else do you have? Well, you had enough to get to the postseason and have some fun along the way.
And if you want to say that's overachieving, let's just look at what happened the next year. Right, that was the Leslie Frazier. Can this guy even coach in the NFL? 3-13 debacle.
Right,
where if they would have lost their last game instead of winning it, they probably would have had RG3 as your starting quarterback, and maybe even not run him out of the wishbone. Like
the definition can't win for losing was Leslie Frazier.
Yeah, exactly. And him before he got his knees blown out, kind of like Teddy, was an absolute NFL quarterback, and Washington ran him basically out of an RPO, and he was a skinny little guy. He got killed. So, but here he might have been fine.
What about some of Mike Zimmer's teams? Because I think since you brought up the 98 team that lost in an NFC championship, you probably have to bring up, I think it was the 17 team, where it was Case Keenum, because it was Case Keenum. I mean, the Vikings had quarterback issues to begin with. Case Keenum wasn't even QB1 that year. It was Sam Bradford supposed to rescue the team because of the Teddy Bridgewater tragedy.
Yeah.
And then it became Case Keenum. Now, I realize that was Sam Bradford's second year, but it lasted, one game? A game and a quarter?
Yeah.
And then it was Case Keenum.
Yep. Bradford is going to be one of those guys that, without injury, right? But, yeah, Case Keenum, a guy we didn't expect anything from, led a team that, again, Vikings team, they had talent, right? But they needed a quarterback who had the wherewithal to win, and they got that because Zim hated quarterback, so he was doing it on his own.
Right. So when you think of the Case Keenum season, what do you remember most? Or what do you think most people remember most? Because there's a method to my madness with this question.
They remember.
Thank you, because that's exactly how I hope this Timberwolves season gets remembered. Because you could easily say, well, remember the end of that Case Keenum season was 38-7 Philly flop. And I get it. You could talk about 2000 where Dante Culpepper appeared out of nowhere as QB1 for the Vikings. They were great, but it ended with 41 donut, and everybody focuses on that. You could do that with this Timberwolves season and go, yeah, but game 5 at home, and you'd absolutely no-showed against the Mavericks. And if you want to do that, that's your prerogative. But like we do with the Keenum season, everybody talks about the miracle, even though they didn't win anything. I hope people walk away from the Timberwolves season going, how many playoff games do we get to watch? Game 7 against Denver, that stuff doesn't happen for us. That happens against us. It's a positive. The Keenum season has a positive memory tied to it, even though we didn't win anything.
No, I agree. The Wolves, real quick. That 7th game against Denver.
Yeah.
Is that the best Minnesota, besides maybe game 163 and the Morris?
Against the Tigers?
Yeah.
And then Morris in 91?
Yep. Is that the best Minnesota sport game?
I think it's the best feeling that I've had by the end of one.
Because it was close the whole way.
Right. And same with the Miracle, even though the Miracle, you go, we were up 17-0 and should have never come to this.
Correct. So that I'm wondering if that's not just the greatest ending, but the greatest game. I mean, the Morris game 163 were both tight, very aggressive back and forth, but that's what the game against Denver was. It was an amazing game.
Well, and here's the thing with that Timberwolves game in the mix with those others. The Timberwolves game, even though it was lopsided for 2 3/4 quarters, the Timberwolves game might have been the only one where you went, they're actually going to win.
Yeah.
In 91, even I think we thought Atlanta's going to find a way to score once and we're in trouble.
Yep.
The Miracle, everything was going against us until then. You know, game 163, they were down. Scott Baker did not start that game very well.
Correct.
Even though a lot of people probably turned it off down 20, watching that second half as it mounted, I think in the back of your mind, you're going, they're going to pull this off somehow.
They could pull this off. It's like the Super Bowl, the Atlanta-New England game, where when they scored, I called you. When New England scored right before halftime, and I was like, they're coming back. You can't give that point up. And sure enough, they came back. And that was kind of the way the Wolves had that mini run before halftime, and it was like,
So we talked about the Wolves because of current events, obviously, but with this opening topic, with the history of overachieving, do the Wolves have any others besides this season? Because, you know, you can say that team that went to the Western Conference Finals, but on paper, that team should have.
Yeah.
You have Sam Cassell, you have Kevin Garnett, you have Latrell Sprewell. You didn't overachieve. You did what you were put together to do.
The other team is a Jimmy team.
But again, he was supposed to at least get them to the postseason, right, and that's all he did.
They brought him in for that, but they fooled around their whole season with, and they made it, but they made it because at time he was right, but he
you
wasn't
just
great.
Said they fooled around with their whole season. To me, that's not overachieving. That's saving face.
Right, but they overachieved at the end when they needed to.
See, and I would go with Rick Adelman's team that should have been 20-62 because everybody was hurt. No. Now, they didn't do anything. I don't even think the postseason was part of it.
That's a good point.
But I think they went somewhere in the area of 41-41 or 40-42.
With a broken
Now,
team.
did anybody rejoice about that? No, probably only basketball nerds like you and me. But that's overachieving. When on paper you're going, we're battling for the number one pick. And then instead you're battling for the last playoff spot.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Those teams are tough to remember, right? Because they weren't great, but they could have been horrid. So yeah, I suppose that's a good example, Brian. And here's the thing: we go to the Minnesota Wild.
There's one. There's one.
What year? 2003?
No, absolutely. Yeah. When you get to the Western Conference Finals and the national audience is going, who the bleep are these guys? I mean, who in the world is Richard Park? Who in the world is Darby Hendrickson outside of Minnesota? We could talk about him later, buy or sell, spoiler alert. But you look at that Wild roster, and it was Gabrick and what in the world? God bless Andrew Brunette. I had his jersey. I enjoyed him. But I think it took all of us as a fan base a while to get to know him because the team was still new.
Right.
And they found their way to a Western Conference Finals. That, to me, is number one with a bullet, partly because I don't know what number two would be.
Well, probably the example you gave with the Timberwolves is probably the year they brought Dubnyk in then. Because they were awful until they'd made the trade for Dubnyk, and then all of a sudden they went on a tear. Now, they didn't finish the deal, but they overachieved the rest of the way.
I would agree with that. If you go to the Twins, because we've only got a couple minutes before we got to get Julianne Vasichek on with us. If you go to the Twins, the easy one would be 91 because you literally went worst to first from 90 to 91. So did the Braves, made for a good storyline. 87, sort of, because again, that core from 82 finally figured it out. You brought up 84 because they started to show signs. I almost said sharded. That's a different kind of uncomfortable experience. A lot of Twins teams have done that down the stretch as well. I look at, the 2017 team that Molitor had and somehow made it to a wild card. Irvin Santana eventually got rocked, but they had kind of a piecemeal pitching rotation and made it work. I think you almost have to look at the Bomba squad and say that overachieved. There wasn't a ton of athleticism on that team at all. Just a bunch of guys that could hit the ball out of the ballpark, and would they do it enough? They did, and they won 100-plus games. Now, again, definition of overachieve. Overachieve with a nice regular season and doing absolutely nothing in the postseason. Is that overachieving or not? But those are just some of the ones I threw out there for baseball.
Yeah, that 84 Twins team needs to be put in context because 82, they lost 102 games. 83, they lost 100 games. 84, 500. Made a big run at the end to get to 500. They were 77 and 85, and they were 71 and 91 in 86, and then they won the whole thing in 87. The definition of the pop-up season is 84. Then 87 was obviously the champion. But they had a whole bunch of scrubs and a bunch of kids in 84 who didn't know enough to know enough that they shouldn't have been any good. And then all of a sudden they were. And that was the overachieving team to me, is that one.
The other one I thought of was the 2001 Twins, and here's why. This team didn't make the playoffs. It fell just short. Cleveland won the division. But think of late 90s Twins baseball.
Right.
Think of how bad that was. In the turn of the century, the 2000 season wasn't any different. 2001, I believe, was Tom Kelly's last season. But he started to mold that group that you saw with the Jock Jones, Torrey Hunter, Mickavich back then, and that whole crew. Ron Gardenhire took over, and they were in the playoffs every year.
Yeah.
I think you have to look back to 2001 as, that was the beginning of that.
Yeah, you're right about those 99, 2000 teams.
97, 98, 99. The only fun part about being a baseball geek like me is you get good seats for about $15.
Yeah, the funny thing is those are the teams that had guys that I really, really liked and thought were going to be good. That's Stahoviak, that's Becker, that's Todd Walker, that's that group.
And those were the years where you can't say has-beens, but
McCarty.
Hall of Famers decided, I'll go ahead and end my career here. This was watching Steinbach. This was watching Molitor. I loved Rich Becker back then. I mean, that says something as well.
Yeah, no, I agree that the teams that you're talking about, where they start bringing in the kids, and all of a sudden, again, Dad, you say it all the time, sometimes kids don't know enough to know they're not supposed to be there. And that's kind of where that team went, too. The Torrey Hunter group, the Jock Jones, like you said, all of a sudden said, nah, we belong.
I think it was a lot of fun to talk about these types of teams because these were teams that put a smile on our face. Maybe we didn't expect it. And we spend so much time, again, it's the Minnesota way, to just pick apart the teams that didn't do very well. Some of that I appreciate. We are not a victim type fan base. We don't say, well, yeah, this wasn't fair because this team did this team did this. We are very much a watch our own bobber, but sometimes it's too often watching your own bobber means put the blame on yourself. Once in a while, we got to appreciate what was done. I think we really need to appreciate what the Minnesota Timberwolves did, and we really, as we will next segment, got to be really happy about PWHL Minnesota, whatever you want to call them champions.
You do have to call them champions. This is going to be a blast. Let's talk about it.
Like the Foo Fighters said, we got the best of you from PWHL Minnesota, one of their biggest fans, one of the biggest names in all of women's hockey, Julianne Vasichek. She joins us next, Northland Sports Page. Stick around. We will be right back. Back on the Northland Sports Page, Brian Prudhomme, Dave Cook, little Lenny Kravitz, American Woman. Hoping to talk to one of our favorite American women, Julianne Vasichek, as we discovered.
Vasichek.
We've been saying Vasichek. We Americanized the heck out of that, or we Minnesoted the heck out of that.
Yes, we did.
But we were trying to catch Julianne Vasichek. The reason we knew that her name is pronounced a little differently is we got her voicemail twice, but we hope to catch her here soon. So this is called on-air ad-lib, but we don't have to ad-lib anything when it comes to having great sponsors.
Brian, next year as a PA announcer, that A is going to get hung out there pretty good. Julianne Vasichek. All right, our sponsors are a fantastic group. Let's start with our newest one, Assisted Living Locators. It's free to use. You can help you or your loved ones locate assisted living, memory care, independent living, things like that. Things that, as their children, we don't have any idea about, right? We spend a whole lot of time looking, and we're probably looking for the wrong thing. So call the folks at Assisted Living Locators, or you can reach them on their website at www.assistedlivinglocators.com/Duluth. That's assistedlivinglocators.com/Duluth. Kraus Heating and Cooling, your Carrier HVAC authorized dealer. Heat and cool your house with Kraus. Advantage Element Screen Printing. Kohler Hyundai and Kohler Toyota. Comfort Systems of Duluth. Stewart's Bike Sports and Trophies. Mount Royal Bottle Shop. Mike Regan at Christensen Group Insurance. Hoops Brewing. The Blackwoods Group, including their locations in Two Harbors, in Proctor, Tavern on the Hill, Blackwater Downtown, and London Road. And Arola Architecture Studio.
So make sure you keep our sponsors plenty busy. Speaking of busy, we think Julianne Vasichek just might be a little busy here today because we know she's down in the cities doing some recruiting. I know that she was going to be in a rink for much of the morning, but said she'd probably have no problem stepping away. That might be true, but maybe the cell phone isn't letting her know that we are beckoning her. We need to get the Batman symbol Julianne style if we can. But again, one of the greatest women's hockey minds, one of the greatest women's hockey players, and all around, I don't know if this goes on a resume too, Dave, but one of our favorite people.
Oh, yeah, Julianne's great. Like I was teasing a second ago, I've been fortunate enough to be her PA announcer for Scholastica Women's Hockey the whole time she's been head coach and the whole time she was an assistant coach. And seeing Julianne grow into the role that she has now and a leader of women, it's just fun to see, and it's really cool to be a part of.
And I guess we'll go ahead and just talk about some of the things that I wanted to talk to her about. Of course, the big story locally in women's hockey, and Julianne Vasichek, she may be the head coach at the College of St. Scholastica and has been for some time now, but a lot of people knew her well before that as a legendary UMD Bulldog women's hockey player. In fact, a member of the anniversary team that was named last year. Big story out of UMD women's hockey yesterday. Maura Kroll, the head coach, is now the head coach at Dartmouth, so there's a coaching vacancy at the University of Minnesota Duluth.
Yeah, that's really an interesting thing because the Bulldogs are a blue blood when it comes to women's hockey.
They are.
Kind of like a Kentucky in men's basketball. And so this coaching job, one, has got to be alluring to just about everybody. But two, has a little bit of pressure on it, right? Because the expectations here aren't, we'll have a good year every so often and see where it takes us.
Get over 500 and watch everybody smile. That's not enough here.
No, and Bulldog women's fans are happy enough turning the screws on everybody else. So the head coach has some leeway to get the job done, and it'll be interesting to see if somebody takes it on.
And that's exactly what I wanted to talk to her about. First of all, I want to put Saints women's hockey fans at ease. I jokingly said to Julianne, I said, there's a coaching vacancy at the University of Minnesota Duluth. Is that something you're going to be interested in? And she said, absolutely not. Yeah. She said, Division I hockey is its own animal, and Division III as a head coach is where I belong. So St. Scholastica fans, including the gentleman across the table from me, exhale.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. It's good to have Julianne back. Again, sometimes we talk about coaches and players and stuff, and they are intimidating or whatnot. And Julianne is just, one, genuine, and two, a really good leader. Like if you have a young lady who wants to play, like there are a lot worse places and a lot worse people to play for than Julianne Vasichek.
And the other reason I wanted to talk to Julianne was because, quite simply, even though she's a legend in the game, she's also a fan of the game. And she was at Game 4 of the PWHL Finals, where Minnesota went through the ultimate emotional roller coaster. They scored a championship-winning goal to be called back under review, to lose the game some 70 seconds later, then have to go on the road for the deciding game, And lo and behold, they won it in shutout fashion.
Yeah. No, how about that team and the resilience, right?
Right.
I remember when the draft happened and the free agents were picked, and it was like, God, this Minnesota team's pretty good. And then they had some injuries. They had some people that didn't start the season.
Anybody who'd been a Bulldog fan had to look at that roster and go, I know her.
Yeah, 100%. And that can be your team or your favorite opponent, right? And
hello, WCHA. It was basically an all WCHA team.
Very true. And, they got through it and got into the playoffs. And what does PA say? Chip, chair, chance.
Right.
And
how about the way they got
healthy.
in? They really staggered to the finish line on a bad losing streak, needed a little luck to get into the postseason. Love the way the PWHL postseason works. Some people could say, well, do you love that or hate that? Because you get to pick, the higher seed gets to pick their opponent, which means that first round series, I believe it was Toronto, said, we'll play Minnesota. You talk about the chip part of chip, chair, chance, different chip. That goes on your shoulder.
Yeah.
When someone picks you and says, we can beat them, not so fast.
Yeah, I don't like that, but you're right. It does add
it adds
some
intrigue.
Entertainment value. I didn't think about that, but yes, that makes it a war. That's true. I just can't. I can't see anything negative about what they did.
No,
like they struggled to get there. None of the series that they won were gravy. They had to work hard every single series to get there. Like you said, they had the heart cut out of them at home.
Which, by the way, I think it was the right call. This wasn't the officials that got it in for us. No, I think they did this correctly.
Right. And then to have them overcome that is just fantastic. Like, again, they won the championship. They weren't supposed to because of how they finished up. And then they really weren't. Nobody really thought they were going to after getting their heart ripped out. And they did. It's resilience. It's talent. It's all the things you want in sport, right? That's what you're looking for.
So again, this segment is supposed to be with Julianne Vasichek, the women's hockey coach at the College of St. Scholastic, and of course, UMD Bulldog legend. I don't think we're going to get her today. I know that she's busy recruiting, and in about 5 minutes, we're going to go to Dave Hoops. But another thing, Dave Cook, that I wanted to talk to Julianne about was, what does this do, not just for women's sports? We can expand on that if we want to, but for this league, because it was kind of the inaugural run of this league. It was a consolidated idea from women's hockey that had been played previously. But what does it do for the cliche of growing the game? And the question that I was going to ask is, we know the WNBA is growing. We know it's because one player is making a big difference in terms of following right now. My question was going to be, who's going to be PWHL's Caitlin Clark? That's going to draw people in droves. Weirdly enough, I kind of hope that her answer would be nobody, because I fear if it's all about one player, if that player doesn't do well or when that player is done, so is the following. My hope is, because we are the state of hockey and there were 8 to 12 players that we know well because of their upbringing in the sport, that there's a better rate of survival and following coming for PWHL.
Well, you remember my theory on startup leagues. You're either local or you win. And
if you're both,
you can do both,
you're lights out.
Right. And so they may not, well, they probably will sell out the X to start next year. And if they continue to perform, they're going to have girls in this sport. And this is the question I wanted to ask Julianne. Not everybody understands the phrase, it's important to women or important to whichever group to have this championship on this stage because of how it impacts people coming up.
Right.
The impact on girls hockey that this should have for this generation of kids who are just starting, or going into mini mites, doing things like that, man, they're wearing PHL jerseys. These women aren't just college players anymore, right? These are the pros they look up to.
The only thing I didn't like about it, but it was an easy comeback on social media, is they said, finally, a Minnesota team wearing purple could win something.
That's true. We didn't get a chance to ask Julianne, and we have to next time.
Well, anything, because you're not here.
Apparently, she is a world-class and college champion chair racer. I got the note here the other day that, you have to ask Julianne about her Olympic level chair racing skills. So next time we have her on, and Julianne, when you're listening to this, I hope you're listening to this either on the podcast or live, you have to tell us about this high-level competitive chair racer.
Yeah, that would be interesting, because it seems like anything that she tries, she succeeds in. And I know she's hoping to get the St. Scholastica women to another level of success as well. I know you wanted to ask her, because you have such a vested interest as the PA guy. She's recruiting this weekend down in the cities, and there's going to be a lot of coaches recruiting. What type of player are you hoping that she's nabbing? What's something the Saints, I don't want to say are missing, but could benefit from having more of?
Well, the one thing that they're going to miss next year is Abby Polkamp. And
Sure.
that's the person who can score when you need a goal. And so they need at least one more goal scorer. They probably need two. Ali Buzzy had a great year last year as well.
I love that kid.
Oh, I know Buzzy's great. Putting goals in the net. They're going to miss the defensive talent of Lisa LaRoche. You're going to have to replace that number one defenseman. They've got good, solid talent coming back, right? Their goaltending is good. The defensive pair, the number one defensive pair is back. And so they've got a lot of things there. Julianne needs to bring in those specific skills that they lost with their seniors.
So unfortunately, we couldn't get Coach on by phone today. Hopefully later on this summer, we can certainly make that happen. We will go to Dave Hoops next, but Dave Cook, I want to pose to you maybe the one question that I was talking about with the Caitlin Clark comparison.
Yeah.
Who do you think it is in women's hockey? Because you look at Taylor Heisey. She was picked number one. She had a great Gopher career. She's with Parker Fox. People sometimes know her just for that reason. I still look at Maddie Rooney from the Olympic resume, the Bulldog career. Even though she wasn't always goaltender one, she's on that team.
I think she's just a little old for the role.
She's
of being
the legend.
Coyne is probably the person who has the most to do with the success of the league since Schofield.
What about Kava with the success she had? Another Bulldog.
The reason I said
Morin with the success she had.
The reason I said Coyne is she's the one that contacted Billie Jean King to get this thing going.
Sure.
And then she was the one that carried the cup, the first person they gave the cup to. So she could be the face, but it's Heisey.
How nice was it to see a Minnesota hockey team hoisting a cup? Take notes, Billy Guerin.
Right.
Wasn't it fun to see that?
Billy
It
Guerin.
can happen. At the X.
Amen.
It didn't get to happen thanks to an overturn, but
Which also is familiar.
on the ice no less.
Right.
It got to happen. No stanchions involved or anything.
Nothing. He's right. You're right. Billy Guerin, see what happens. Win.
Unfortunately, no Julianne Vasichek involved this morning either, but we'll get her later on this summer. Again, she's got a great relationship with both of us. I imagine we'll get about 1,000 apologies sometime later on today. But no apologies for what we do here on the Northland Sports Page. Dave Hoops is next. Stick around. We'll be right back.
And Bingo was his name.
Almost 7 years on this show, and I don't think we assumed we'd ever be bumping in with Bingo was his name-o, but we're going to play some Bingo Wednesday night.
Oh.
And we're going to do it down at Hoops Brewing. Hoops Brewing, one of our illustrious sponsors. Dave Cook, you've got the list of several.
Yes, Mike Regan at Christensen Group Insurance. The Blackwoods Group, including their locations. Blackwater right downtown, who was very busy last night, like I had said. Tavern on the Hill, Proctor. The location in Two Harbors and the location on London Road where we tend to spend our money when we go to Blackwoods or Tavern on the Hill when we're just going with the group.
I was going to say, you name the ones in Duluth, and I frequent them all.
Yeah, and you spend a little bit of time and money at Blackwater.
Been known to do that.
This is one of those where we put money where our mouth is.
Absolutely.
Here. Mount Royal Bottle Shop, another place where we do that, right? Stewart's Bike Sports and Trophies, Comfort Systems of Duluth, Kohler Toyota and Kohler Hyundai, Advantage Emblem and Screen Printing, Kraus Heating and Cooling, your Carrier HVAC authorized dealer, Assisted Living Locators, free to use, helping your loved ones, locating assisted living, memory care, independent living, and so on. You can reach them at www.assistedlivinglocators.com/Duluth. That's www.assistedlivinglocators.com/Duluth. Arola Architecture Studio, the OG, and of course, Dave Hoops from Hoops Brewing.
Hoops Brewing, Brewery Turn Bingo Hall, come Wednesday, June 5th.
Bring your dollars,
you
Brian.
and I already have a group getting together to do that. It's going to be a lot of fun.
We got to make sure Dave has dollars.
There you go. I would think that he'll be ready. So, Dave Hoops, if you haven't put 2 and 2 together and got 4 already, we're pretty excited about the bingo from your intro music. And good morning, sir. Welcome back from Paris, by the way.
Good morning. Long travel day yesterday, but home in beautiful Duluth. And back to Dave's comment, yes, Daubers are in the house, and this will be once a month. And then once it slows down after summer, it'll probably be a weekly thing, and should be fun, the bingo.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. I think it'll be a good time for everybody. And just one more thing you can do to have a blast down at Hoops Brewing. And thank you for your hospitality, even though we couldn't see you in the flesh. Being there last weekend for a couple of shows was a lot of fun. The Harbor Monsters after party was a lot of fun as well. Speaking of the Harbor Monsters, I talked about Wednesday bingo. That's great. But next Sunday, as in June 9th, happy 1st of June, by the way, June 9th, next Sunday, you got a meet and greet with the team at the brewery as well.
We do after every game, and then tonight we'll have the game also streaming live, and have that going on for the away game. So, and then we debuted their beer too, the number 50, the Monster Ale, which will be on tap, and it's a really nice, light, easy drinking beer. Should be a big hit.
I have heard good reviews of that number 50, the Monster Ale at Hoops Brewing, but I will say the two of us in this studio right now, Dave Hoops, we're a little jealous. We're still hoping that someday down the road, a Northland Sports Page beer can come to be, whether it be the Northland Sports Page Ale, if you like alliteration, maybe the Northland Sports Page Pilsner. We got to work on something together, don't we?
Well, we sure can. We keep on doing little things. We're doing something with the guys outside the Happy Hooker Charters. We've got lemonade mixed with Pilsner.
Ooh, yeah.
So shandies. We're always interested in, of course, you guys are near and dear to us, so we'll talk about that for sure. Something that you guys would really like, and, well, Dave can sniff it maybe.
There you go. Yeah, Brian can sample everything, and Dave can keep his nose nearby. There you go.
So we're doing root beer then, Dave?
Maybe that's what you got to do. You got to find a kombucha or a root beer that you can name after Dave Cook, and I'll just be the beer guy. That's completely fine. But, again, last week it was really kind of a tip of the cap to technology, because as much as we struggled, and you knew you would, with the cell reception in rural Wisconsin a couple weeks back, you were crystal clear in the brewery, and everybody enjoyed it. Coming to us from Paris last Saturday, it was last Saturday night for you. Again, the focal point of that trip was Daisy's graduation, but Roland Garros, big things happening there. And what was it like? Again, tell us more about being in that city at that time.
Oh, it's pretty great. I'm actually have it on right now, and it's raining there now. But the city really gets behind it, and they only show matches on TV there that are French nationals, as opposed to here, which of course every match is on.
Right.
They're really excited. The whole city is advertising the Olympics, and they're cleaning things up. They're trying to clean up the river. I do not think that's going to be a success, but there's a lot of national pride. As we all know, that the French are very proud of their city and their language and everything else, but they were very good, hospitable host to us all. And I was really glad to get home around 10 o'clock last night and back home to Duluth.
Now, I have to ask, speaking of national pride in France, did you find any extra Timberwolves fans thanks to Rudy Gobert out there? That's a Frenchman, of course.
Well, no, but I was able to watch the games, and I did see a surprising amount of Timberwolves garb on the streets. Now, I can't say what nationality was wearing that, but I was surprised, and I was really hoping for that Game 6 win so that we could watch live back at home, but we all know how that ended up. So, better luck next year. That's always my default.
That just packs the house for the Harbor Monster viewing tonight instead of what would be Game 6 for 100%. Mavs T-Wolves. Dave, go ahead.
No, Dave, I was very excited to congratulate you on the graduations of both kidlings in the last 10 days. But I wanted to ask, from your point of view and from the brewery's point of view, how successful has the relationship with the Harbor Monsters been so far? Brian and I have just been gushing on their relationship with the community, and I know that's something you're very proud of as well for the brewery. And I'm wondering about that relationship and how you guys are working together and so on.
It's been a complete joy. They got a hold of us right away. It's just, we unabashedly promote sports, and it's very authentic. And it was never a question that we would basically do whatever they were interested in. So we have meetings with them frequently, and they've been super great to work with. They named the beer that we just made. They isolated the style of beer, and they're quite excited about the possibilities here. And I noticed that they just dominated last game, so maybe they're going to be good as well. And I heard really good things about the after party from my staff. And again, tonight I think the cheerleaders will be down there, and like I said, we'll be streaming it. So we're really excited about being their partners. For sure.
Yeah, I think that relationship is only going to blossom, and the excitement is going to build throughout the summer. Speaking of excitement building, I'm going to go towards summer, because once the fog lifts this morning, it should be a very nice day, and it looks like tomorrow too. Meteorologists, if you got this one right, it looks like it should be a nice weekend. You talked about this a little bit last week from Paris when we were at Hoops Brewing. We were inside, but right now that doesn't have to be your only option when you come down to the brewery.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. The beer garden continues to get more, and we just are doing it better. It's compact. We keep on adding little seating areas. It's very pleasant. It's open if it's nice out. We learned that people don't really want it open when it's not. And and we've got a group of young people who really like hanging out there with working the bar with a little bit of music. And I mentioned the charter pairing, with the Happy Hookers, who are just wonderful people. You should call them about advertising. Just
there you go.
Side note.
I do appreciate that sponsorship idea. Plus, I could get a boat ride out of the deal.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, we're really excited about just the overall, nice weather. It's kind of grandma's is the beginning of the season down in Canal Park, but we've been a little ahead of the curve on that, probably thanks to the weather. And then we just are constantly finding new things to try to make people feel welcome and very much community oriented. I can't push that enough. We're really not a bar. We're a place to get together. And that, Brian and Dave, you guys last week was a great example.
I love going down there. You give me a reason and I'm going down. Sometimes you even don't have to give me a reason. If I'm in the area and it's like, well, I'm in Canal Park, what am I going to do? Hoops just becomes a stop. And I love that about the place itself.
Yeah, that's so true. The atmosphere is come on in. It's not, hey, let's just get plowed. It's not just a bar. It's a place to be. And like we've talked about before, it's a place you can have kids along because there's things to do. Like it is, Brian, it's not just another place. Right? It's a community place, and Dave's been pushing that since we met him.
Absolutely, and there's something going on every day of the week. In fact, Dave Hoops, if you can recap that for us real quick. I know I used to have it pretty well memorized, but I know the summer can change some things up, and it looks like Wednesday's now becoming bingo, hopefully, but that's going to be once a month, as you were saying. I know you've got vinyl night. I think that was outside earlier this week. I think the weather may have permitted that. What do we have day by day at the brewery as far as big events?
Well, every Monday we have trivia. And every Tuesday we have cribbage, which is now going on its sixth season of the cribbage tournament, which is free, and prizes are given each week, and it's quite popular. We've done people really seem to enjoy it. Wednesdays we'll be expanding on the bingo, and we're also expanding on the pull tabs, which have been, I don't really play them. I can't legally,
right.
But people seem to enjoy that. And then Thursday, Aaron Molina, our in-house DJ, in or out, he drives that. And then seems like, all weekend now we have get-togethers in there highlighting a bunch of graduation parties and various things. In fact, I've got a graduation party this afternoon. But pretty much every night. And then we also will welcome our new partners opening up the bar next door right now. And that will add another component that will make it even more fun for folks to come down. In general, we're really hopeful about the future here. And last summer was really great in Canal Park. And the more things happening down there, the better it is for everybody. And there's a lot of things happening.
100%. You can plan your entire summer calendar basically around Hoops Brewing if you wanted to. And, of course, watch parties for any sport you could possibly want as well. Harbor Monsters tonight. Dave Hoops, we talk basketball with a guy whose last name is Hoops because it's been the talker in Minnesota, but you're a hockey guy. The Oilers lead 3-2. The Panthers lead 3-2. Are they both going to finish this, or do you see a comeback from somebody else?
I see the Rangers winning tonight and forcing a Game 7. I think the Rangers are a tremendous team, although Florida is clearly a better team. But they're at, Madison Square Garden is kind of the mecca of hockey and basketball. We don't feel that way, but it really is. And then, the Garden is obviously a big deal. But I like the Rangers' chances tonight, and then I would love to see a Rangers-Edmonton series because I like both teams. And we don't need to talk about Dallas. There's only one player that matters on that team. And, a lot of people like Dallas a lot. They're a great team. But I really would love to see that matchup. So I'm picking that, although my picks are generally wrong. I think you're aware of that.
That's all right, though. That's the fun in making picks. I would tell you that my success rate isn't very good either. Dave Cook, I want to see the Oilers-Rangers final because I just want to see Mark Messier's head spin on TV.
Right. No, that's exactly what it would be, too.
So, again, it could be a life-altering experience for some teams getting to the finals. Of course, the NBA finals are set. We've got Boston and Dallas. We'll talk to Rick Rickard about that in the second hour when we begin that in about 5 minutes. But the final 5 minutes, Dave Cook's life-altering questions.
All right, so we've been trying to do the three players comparison over the last month. I think so far it's been successful. So I have us three-player conversation today, and it's Hall of Fame wide receivers, but not that top echelon guys. I kind of want to get your guys' opinion and maybe even rank them. Ready? Here we go. Julio Jones, Terrell Owens, and Michael Irvin.
Michael Irvin?
Ooh,
Yeah.
Okay.
I even
great.
took the G off, like Michael Irvin.
It's all right. It reminds me of all the people that say Tarkington. There's no G there at all. Go ahead, Dave Hoops.
That's a great one, Dave. I got to go with Michael Irvin because those are all three really great. I like his showmanship a little bit more than Owens's. I love his role in The Longest Yard. I like his commentary on ESPN, and he was, a big, tall, bruising wide receiver when Troy Aikman was throwing pretty average numbers, but winning Super Bowls like crazy. I pick him easily out of those.
Oh, wow, easily.
All right, so who's 2 and 3? Because I'm curious if we're going to rank the same the whole way through.
Julio and then Terrell.
Okay, so I've got one thing flipped from what Dave Hoops had, because I, too, am going to put Michael Irvin first. Look at this trio, and it's like, man, pick a headache. But Julio Jones, his biggest headache was he can't stay healthy. I put him third probably for that reason. T.O. might be the most naturally gifted, but he was just a pain to deal with. And early in his career, he had the dropsies quite a bit. Now, Michael Irvin had a fantastic career, did a lot of wonderful things. I think he's maybe the biggest reason, besides, of course, Emmitt Smith, because a good running back helps any quarterback. But Troy Aikman, to me, was never that great. His resume and his accolades are going to say he was. Michael Irvin made him great. If they called the push-off, just like they would have against Drew Pearson, Michael Irvin might not have had a career at all. But I do think that the way he was able to operate, whether it was in the rules or not, you can decide that for yourself. Michael Irvin is 1 for me. T.O. is 2. T.O. by the end almost looked like a journeyman, which is weird to say for such a stud receiver. Mm-hmm. Julio Jones, again, just the health issues. The one thing Julio Jones probably has in his corner compared to some of the others here, though, is he didn't play with great quarterbacks all that often. Matt Ryan was okay. Julio Jones didn't play with greatness, and he made them pretty good. But I would go Irvin, Owens, and then Julio Jones.
Isn't it interesting? Because I go T.O. first with a bullet.
Okay.
Because I think he's the guy that made the greatest. And
if he wasn't a locker room problem, you're probably right, by the way.
Yep. Nope. I agree with that. And Irvin and Julio Jones are such an interesting comparison because, like you said, Jones was hurt all the time. And yet his numbers are ridiculous. Michael Irvin just, he struggled to start. Like his starting out of the blocks, he wasn't all that great. But then he was so consistent for a decade, right? Andre Johnson is almost somebody that I consider Michael Irvin.
But don't blink, yeah.
Right. So, all right. So the second question then I have is, do I have a lot of time or a little time?
A little.
Okay. So last week we talked about songs. The first time you heard them, you were like, okay, I know that's going to be successful. I want to turn it a little bit. I'm going to give you an artist. So the first time you heard an artist, you went, oh, that's going to be great. And I'll give you my example. Runaway from Bon Jovi. The first time I heard it, the song's okay, but it was like, whoa, this is completely different. Or Don't Bring Me Down from ELO, or even a little bit further back, the first time you saw the Village People. Even though now they're kind of silly, but the first time you saw them, it was like, these guys are different. They're going to make it.
Good question. ELO is that would have been my answer, actually. They were so far ahead of their time, as were tons of music in the 70s and early 80s. This is what I listen to today. But I'm going to go say Queen, Bohemian Rhapsody, a couple of the other early songs, Fat Bottom Girls, Don't Try Suicide. That was big, for a lot of different reasons back then. I thought that they were really unique, and his voice was pretty captivating, and I didn't know if people in America were necessarily going to go gaga over him. I'd love to say Elton John, but that was so obvious. His talent level was just so off the charts that I can't say that.
All right, so mine is Lionel Richie. That's a good one. With or without the Commodores. And I think it's because later on we got to know how good his voice actually is. It wasn't so much about the funk and a little bit of the disco sound. It was really him just singing. And his voice for me is ultimate. I can't say enough good things about it. If my mom's listening, she's probably laughing because I loved him when I was about 4. But I also think over the years, because he's still performing, his voice hasn't lost a lot, and most people do. Oh, yeah. No, that's a good pull. Like, I hadn't thought of Lionel Richie. And also, the other thing is, while you were talking, I was thinking about country guys because, think of the first time you heard Garth Brooks, and you were like, ooh, this guy's different. He's going to make it. So, Toby Keith. Yeah. First time you heard Toby Keith, you were like, okay, I get this. Absolutely. One thing we can get for sure at Hoops Brewing is good beer just about everywhere. We talked about all the events. Dave, to close, just give us some of the delicious flavors you like, the Baskin-Robbins of breweries. Well, thank you. So what's really great, we mentioned the Monster Ale,
and we always talk about the fruit beers, but we have a brand new summer wheat beer on, which is really easy drinking, and it kind of corresponds because on Wednesday I'll have an article in the DNT about wheat beers, basically breaking down all the different styles, and anybody that bothers to read it might, get some information out of that. And I wanted to mention number 15. It doesn't get enough love. It's our best-selling beer by far. It's a tremendous pale ale, and that's what the locals drink, the regulars drink. Try it. Just go back to it. And then, of course, the Redwood Pale Ale, which I've been pushing hard because it's so piney and wonderful. So I would recommend that. And, of course, try that new Shandy if you like a little bit lighter, lemonade with your beer. It's quite refreshing.
I will certainly be trying that. Dave Hoops, you are the best. We're bumping you out with a song called Paris. We're glad that you're back, and we will talk to you again next week. Perhaps we'll see you Wednesday at the Brewery Turn Bingo Hall.
You shall, and I hope to see you there, and I hope to see you guys really soon, and thanks again